Hi guys, so on the 3rd of March, the UK government decided to suspend part of the Northern Ireland Protocol in regard to checks being carried out in the border with Northern Ireland, and to extend the grace period in regard to goods moving from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Now, this was done unilaterally. It was a breach of the Northern Ireland Protocol because both sides have to sit down and work out any and deal with any problems that exist or have come out of Brexit. That's what the protocol is there for. It requires both sides to meet and to resolve these issues. The UK government decided to ignore that and to act unilaterally, and the EU is responding to this. Now, the EU is responding in two ways. They're first going to issue a letter of formal notice, and second, they are issuing a political letter. Now, I'll get to the political letter in a moment. It's quite interesting. But let me speculate as to why Boris Johnson is doing this. And this speculation might be a bit counterintuitive, but let's see how it goes. Why would Boris Johnson be doing this? I think he wants to play a game of chicken with the EU in order to keep hardline Brexiteers on board. He has signed off on a trade deal. He's also criticizing the trade deal in an indirect way. But anyway, he's saying that this is the deal that he has signed with the EU. The UK government has ratified it. It was rushed through Parliament. MPs didn't even have a chance to read it in many cases. But the EU have not ratified it yet. If the EU do not ratify it, the European Parliament, I should say, then it will fail. It will cease to exist. And it will be a massive failure for Boris Johnson. And the disruption you're seeing at the ports at the moment will be nothing compared to a scenario where there is no trade deal. It'd be WTO rules. It'd be a no-deal Brexit. The disruption will be what you're seeing is the tip of the iceberg. Now, so why isn't he meeting with them to extend these grace periods? No, he needs to convince the EU to act tough with the UK. If they act tough with the UK, then it's easier for Boris Johnson to pull back. So I think what his goal is to convince the EU to sign off on the trade deal in order to access certain tools that can be used to punish the UK. For example, the imposition of tariffs or sanctions. The EU would take the first steps to impose those, and then at the last minute Boris Johnson would pull back. Similar in a way to how he reacted to how he interacted, I should say, with the EU in respect to the internal market bill. Push it, and then at the last minute pull back. I think he's going to do something similar with the grace periods. Play tough, and then at the last minute pull them out. And it might work. So he may get the EU to sign off on the withdrawal on the trade deal, and then he can say, okay, we've done it, and he can go back to his Brexiteers and say, see, everything is okay. We're going to continue as we are. I think that could be his approach. I could be wrong. It's a bit muddled. But Boris Johnson, you have to remember, Boris Johnson doesn't have long-term thinking. Everything he does is on a daily basis. It's all tactical. And Theresa May was quite similar. It seems to be something about the Conservative Party. They have no long-term thinking. Everything is, what can I do today to get me over the problem of today? Now, of course, the EU is not taking this lying down, and they've responded with a formal letter and a letter from the Vice-President of the European Commission, who's also the co-chair of the Joint Committee on the Partnership Council. So he wrote, this letter reads a little bit like the type of letter you'd receive from your local council if you built an extension without permission. So it's quite neutral. It's not aggressive, but it is clear and direct. So, but there is a little bit of informality as well to it, which is interesting. So you see here, Dear David Frost is written in handwriting, Dear David. the next part I want to highlight, it says here, it should be recalled that the protocol as an integral part of the withdrawal agreement is in force since the 1st of January and has full effects under international law. So you're going to break international law by breaking this protocol. But the EU and the UK are bound to comply with its obligations and cannot unilaterally change or disapply them. So he's basically saying, of course, you have your obligations, we have our obligations. On no side can we act unilaterally. It's a breach of the protocol and the withdrawal agreement. Now he goes on to say in another part, more than 2 months after we agreed these arrangements in the framework, so this was agreed, okay, this is not something up in the air, the framework of the Joint Committee, there has been insufficient progress towards compliance on the ground, and the UK has decided unilaterally to depart from the rules of the protocol and the common agreed solutions for its implementation. So there hasn't been any progress, and this is something that you don't really hear about in the media. We hear about the UK, extending the grace periods. We hear about the problems of the grace periods. We hear about the problems of goods moving from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. But on the EU side, they have been saying on numerous occasions that the UK has not fulfilled its side of the bargain when it comes to progress towards compliance. So the border posts are not up to speed. There isn't sufficient staff. There aren't sufficient checks being carried out. And this is part of the problem as well. This part here, he says the UK has resorted to a unilateral action without any discussion or consultation with the EU side in the bodies established by the agreement. This is important. You'll hear Brexiteers saying how the EU is, coming down strong and punishing the UK. No, everything that's taking place on the EU side is within the framework of the withdrawal agreement and the protocol. It has therefore acted in breach. It has therefore acted in breach of the mutual trust and spirit of cooperation that we managed to rebuild in the last months of 2020 after the uncertainty created by the UK internal market bill. So that was something that we don't hear about much anymore. Back in the latter part of 2020, the UK pulled out the internal market bill and were threatening to break international law. Remember, in a very limited and specific way. The EU responded to this by taking legal action, legal procedures, and of course the UK pulled back at the last moment. This aspect I also wanted to talk about here. It says, second, the UK's unilateral measures also violate the duty of good faith under Article 5 of the Withdrawal Agreement. According to this article, both parties must take all appropriate measures to ensure the fulfilment of the obligations rising from the withdrawal agreement. Once again, this is in reference to what happened before. The UK is not fulfilling its side of the withdrawal agreement. It's not just the extension of these grace periods, it's also that parts of the withdrawal agreement are not being maintained. Instead of providing for the implementation of the protocol, the measures of the UK government therefore jeopardise the attainment of the objectives pursued by the withdrawal agreement. So he's talking here about how we've made some progress so far. This is something new. This is something that hasn't been done before, and we're making, I think this is in reference perhaps to Michael Gove. Michael Gove and Šefčovič had a good relationship. They seem to have been making a lot of progress. The European Union were quite had a high opinion of Michael Gove, much higher than I do. But they said that a lot of progress had been made. Both sides had respected each other. And now that David Frost is in charge, things have gone in a different direction. And this could be part of Boris Johnson's plan, to appear tough for Brexiteers. This may all come to nothing. And it's a dangerous game to be playing. But I think it's part of a plan to force the EU to do something, but the EU may not actually do it at the end of the day. And then he also says here, let me assure you that the European Union in this sense, is fully committed to making the protocol work for all, as it considers the protocol to be the only viable way to protect the Good Friday Belfast Agreement and to preserve peace and stability, while avoiding a hard border on the island of Ireland. So we know that the protocol is there as a solution. It's not perfect, but both sides have to work together to make it work. And I just want to read this final part from Mr. Šefčovič's letter. He says, however, I hope that through the collaborative, pragmatic and constructive spirit that has prevailed in our work so far on implementing the withdrawal agreement, we can solve this issue in the Joint Committee without recourse to arbitration. So there's still time to sort this out. Okay, the European Commission has taken steps from a legal point of view. This is the political letter. This is what we as politicians should do. We should come together and fix this as, as mutual, as peers, as counterparts. Okay. It's not necessary to take the legal route. There is still a possibility to avoid it. Now, I think this is concerning because the EU have to protect the single market. They have to protect the protocol because the protocol is there to protect peace in Northern Ireland. But some people want to destroy it. Some people want to throw it away. Those mainly are the ones in the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, and some Brexiteers. They don't care about peace in Northern Ireland. They don't care about the people of Northern Ireland. They just want to, in a sense, give the EU a bloody nose. Fortunately, I think Boris Johnson is not one of those. Boris Johnson is looking out for himself. And if this deal that he signed with the European Union were to collapse, either because the EU did not ratify it or because of the problems of coming out of the protocol and his extension of these grace periods, I think it would be extremely damaging to his career. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?